Tesla may be coming to India sooner than we thought, sooner than some people thought anyway, maybe later than some people thought, but we've got some breaking news recently. It broke a week ago, but we're going to fix it. I'm joined by Randy Kirk, who knows a thing or two about a thing or two. At least that's what it says on his business card, which I have never seen. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza.
I'll have to send you a business card.
You'll have to send me a business card. Make it a mailer.
Okay, I'll do
We'll do it the old-fashioned way there. So I don't know if you've heard, but Tesla's been scouting locations in India, and they're already producing vehicles in Berlin for the import. What have you heard about the import exemption?
Yeah, so I mean, I've certainly read everything I think that's in print about this, and I was a little shocked at one aspect of the exemption. I was also shocked that it would be news that they're scouting locations because I kind of thought they were scouting locations a year ago, and then 6 months ago, and 3 months ago when they were having all these conversations. So if they're only now scouting locations, that threw me off a lot. Then the part that surprised me about the conversation on the new duty limitation was that, as far as I can tell, they're limited to 8,000 vehicles a year.
Yeah.
So importing 8,000 vehicles into India in exchange for building a $2 billion plant, there seemed to be some kind of confusion. I'm hoping that this is not true.
It's insane. It's an insanely low number, 8,000 a year for a maximum of 40,000 units. That'd be great if you have a factory there and you just want to import some S and X or even 3 and Y, but really S and X. Those are the ones where you're going to get the bang for the buck. They would probably want to start making them in right-hand drive again. The automaker will focus on states with existing automotive hubs, including Maharashtra and Gujarat in the west and Tamil Nadu in the south. Makes sense. Put them where you can already get glass and fabric and switches and blinkers. These are all things. Separately, Reuters has reported that starting production of right-hand drive cars out of Berlin for the Indian market. Now, do you know why they would use them from Berlin rather than Shanghai?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was that the folks who are writing this article might, if their information is correct, they were probably insinuating that India wouldn't want to bring them in from China because they don't have great relationships with China. However, Larry Goldberg and I did a very deep dive on that entire region. And do you know that even the South Koreans, the Japanese, and the Taiwanese do business with China? So, and by the way, India too. I'm just saying, but all of the countries around China who have many of whom have really bad relations with China do business with China.
And I would take it a step further and say, if the exemption is already written and they can just do it, then they would just do it. As the author points out, I would take these reports with a grain of salt for the reasons mentioned above, but it would make sense for Tesla to move into the Indian market soon. You and I have discussed this. As you know, I had a video years ago explaining why entering the Indian market would make sense. Now we've got another report here. This is the Financial Times one that they were actually addressing. They would have to actually start building the factory. So I don't know if the reports of a right-hand drive model from Giga Berlin are accurate. I haven't seen anything on the ground that would support that. It's also possible that those units could be sent to the UK, just across the water there. So it's possible. It seems a little premature to start building the cars now when there isn't even an announcement, let alone groundbreaking. But now would be a pretty good time to work on that. And I tell you, as soon as I see you say the wrong name, the one that Elon himself has said, it's not called the Model 2. I don't know who
Right.
started that. Please stop calling that, which has been dubbed by people who don't know enough. No, it's called the Compact. And that's a more accurate name. Just call it that until we know what it's called. And BYD has submitted a proposal to build a plant in India in a partnership. So these things are all very real and very possible. Will they actually happen? Do you think Tesla building, do you think they could sell Model 3s and Ys in numbers up to 8,000 per year.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So I've never been to India. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to do that, but I have had dealings in India. In fact, when I sold my manufacturing business, the second place group that was interested in buying my manufacturing business was the second largest water bottle manufacturer in the world, who wanted to become number one by buying us because we were number one on the bicycle water bottles. But anyway, so they were from India, and so I learned a lot about India through them, and of course, because they were thinking about buying us, I did some deep diving, and then Larry has had very large businesses. Larry Goldberg, very large businesses in India for many, many decades. So he and I talked about this a lot. It is, of course, the largest population in the world now. They've passed China, and China's population is significantly dropping by hundreds of thousands per year, while India's is continuing to increase. The India population, the economics of India is improving, getting better and better. Lots and lots of engineering schools turning out top quality engineers. Meanwhile, China is struggling right now. They might have an increase of 5% in their GDP this year, but that would be amazing if they actually hit the 5%. Most people don't think that's going to happen. So you've got a tale of two massive companies with massive populations kind of going in opposite directions. India has lots and lots and lots of millionaires and 100,000aires and people that make significant money. One of the jokes about India is you'll go into a neighborhood, including these guys that were going to buy my company. They show me a picture of their home, and here's this gorgeous home with high walls and electrified fence, and right next to their house is an absolute slum that would make some of the slums that we're now experiencing in our inner cities seem like, first world nations. So there's a lot of rich people, plenty of people to buy these more expensive vehicles.
I would say that is 100% true. 8,000 a year to a country with over a billion people is not very many units. And again, I think those would be for the highest end vehicles, the ones that the reason you need this import exemption is, do you recall what the tax rate is on imported vehicles?
Seemed to me it was around 100%.
100% if the car is below a certain price,
Oh, that's
and then
right.
it's higher if it's, a Model S or X. It could be, I don't remember if it was 130 or 180%. So your $70,000 car is now 200 grand. Pretty soon you're talking about real money. That's pretty ridiculous. If you want to get into the real garbage, you can cover NDTV World. Elon Musk Tesla begins making cars in Germany for export to India. Report. Now, we do know that officials have visited the country several times over the past year, and that Elon has met with Narendra Modi in New York last June. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a done deal, not by a long shot. Tesla has begun production of right-hand drive cars at its plant in Germany for export to India later this year. That's not the right time frame.
Well, later this year could mean next week.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
generally when you hear later this year, you think later this year, but next week would be later this year. I think if they are in fact making right-hand vehicles right now, I kind of like your idea. There are other countries besides India that still have right-hand drive, including I don't know, the United Kingdom, South Africa, I think comes to mind. There's a couple of others.
Yeah, Thailand.
Yeah.
Pretty much
So
all of the former British
British,
colonies
yeah.
drive on the other side. Nigeria switched maybe 15 years ago because enough with the colonial superpowers. We're going to get away from our colonial roots. India last month slashed the import rate on certain electric vehicles if they invest at least $500 million in the country and start production there within 3 years. So Tesla could export them now and then just have to say, okay, we will have the factory underway within 3 years. Otherwise, India is going to turn around and say, yeah, we need a big pile of tax money to cover those vehicles.
Yeah, and this whole India thing kind of just brings back again, Brian. I think it's worth bringing up if we want to keep, a balanced view on Tesla as to why every aspect of the growth of the factories seems to have ground to something close to a halt compared to what it was 2 years ago. So whether Elon is still nervous about the world economy, whether he's just got other Tesla matters on his mind that he feels are more important in terms of growing the company, but Reno and Shanghai 2 and even Berlin second phase and Mexico, India. These all were thought, we thought Mexico would be underway last March. We thought India would be a signed deal with Elon visiting, in the first quarter of this year. We thought Reno would be under construction by the end of last year. I mean, all these things have been slowed down. That would be an interesting question for the earnings call.
Tesla's push into India comes at a time when slowing EV demand in its main US and China markets coincides with intensifying competition from Chinese players, first quarter delivery, and miss estimates. So, first of all, missing estimates means the analysts got it wrong, not the company. I've said that before. And slowing EV demand, boy, I don't think it's reasonable to look at one quarter and you've got a data point of one. That's premature to draw a trend line. Tesla's India plans includes investment in the charging network, which will come on top of the $2 billion earmarked for the plant. And by the way, do you think $2 billion is the right number? Too high, too low, just about right?
It just depends on what they're trying to accomplish. And I would assume that any investment, whether it was a $500 million or $2 billion or $5 billion, any investment that they're contemplating making is flexible in both directions. We've certainly seen that happen, but that's probably a good estimate for a facility that is probably going to be mostly making the new Generation 3, size or type of cars and robotaxis. So
I agree. I think 2 billion is the right number. It's enough to get your land. Construction is very reasonable. Building supplies are very reasonable. Labor is very reasonable for all of those things. India has a very good workforce in terms of skilled labor for construction. Earlier, you mentioned the engineering, and they do have hundreds of engineering universities across all disciplines. So the talent is there, the labor is there, the supplies are there. And I think 2 billion is the right number because that would be the first phase, which would leave room for expansion, of course, and they would have an opportunity to grow it from there. Texas was originally supposed to be a $1 to $2 billion factory. I think they're at $4.5–5 billion already. Shanghai was supposed to be $2 to $4 billion. They are clearly at the high end of that, probably well beyond it now, because those factories expanded because they worked. So there's a lot of opportunities here. My question in the comments is, what did we miss about India? Should they go there? Is it crazy? Can the market even afford a $25,000 car? And the biggest question of all is there a world in which FSD could actually work in traffic that you've seen in India? I've seen locals tell me that they would be shocked if it didn't require just all new roads and rules, because it is a real symphony of chaos.
Well, let me just make a quick comment, because this was something that Larry did bring up when we were doing the show several months ago, and that is there are some substantial new road systems going in that are very modern, very freeway-esque, and that these chaotic situations are primarily obviously in the big cities, not necessarily even in the suburbs, to the extent that we have suburbs in India. But yeah, they are modernizing very, very rapidly, modernizing the road systems.
And we've seen that in China. The roads 20 years ago, there were a lot of places that were sheer chaos, and now they're less chaotic, more what I would consider civilized for road standards. But that's what happens when you have old cities that were built before the advent of automobiles. The philosophy was different. It had to fit the current times, and it will take a while for India to rebuild those roads, those systems, those philosophies, those rules and regulations. But that doesn't mean it's impossible. But in the comments, I'd love to know, what do you guys think? Is it impossible? Can it happen? Is India just a terrible idea or a brilliant move? Let us know. We got to find out. Everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual things. Maybe head on over to that old Randy Kirk channel there, see what he's up to these days. Who knows? He might discuss Tesla this week. So everybody else, like, subscribe, do what you do, smack the thummy thing in either direction. Either one helps out tremendously. You know what you're doing. And yeah, everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots, perhaps in Gujarat.